Hello and welcome to the Property Development Club podcast. I'm John Kenel and I'm joined today by Andrew Crosby. Morning, Andrew.
Yeah, morning, John. How you been? Going around the
Um,
world, testing out everyone else's property.
no, it was an awesome trip. 6 weeks in Europe. I thought it might be too long, but I could have stayed. Had an absolutely fantastic time. You forget how much history and culture there is in Europe. You're in places that the buildings that are 1,000 years old, and people are still living in them. Some places like the Alhambra, it's built on top of Roman ruins. And, it's something like 2,000-year-old ruins, and pretty hard to find in New Zealand, that's for sure.
The my son was in France. He probably just came home just as you left.
Okay.
He was on a school junket. So,
Very cool.
so the rest of the family didn't get to go to Europe, but at least he did. So there you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Oh, that's good.
And
Real good.
what's the most interesting property related thing you found out over there? Do you reckon?
Probably to do with density, really.
Mm.
Like we complain a lot about, or there's a lot of complaining about density in New Zealand and high density, and it's ugly and it's cramming people in and all these kind of negative things. But uh, density done well is actually a really cool thing. If I think of some of the old towns we stayed in Spain, and you're in the again, like hundreds or even thousands of years old, and there's houses are crammed in tiny little alleyways, small apartments, balconies looking straight at each other. Right? There's no privacy concerns or controls. Like you're looking straight across at your neighbor, um, but it actually works. Like,
Yeah.
and I think part of it is that people flow out into the street. The public spaces are so nice that it doesn't matter if you've got a small apartment because you're not spending all your time there, right?
Yeah.
You go outside and you're in the cafes and you're in the parks and you've got art galleries and museums, and there's always something going on. So you're not just sitting in your lounge by yourself. You're actually coming and going, and having a small space is not an issue. And also with that privacy, yes, you can see what your neighbor's up to, and what time their kids eat their dinner, or when they do their homework and so on. But at the same time, because you know them and because you have contact with them, because you see each other, you're actually a lot nicer to each other.
Hmm.
Like, and even if you don't know them, even if you don't speak to them, they're part of your community. And I think that's one thing I noticed just walking around. We did so much walking because we tried to get hotels in or around the old towns. You're seeing other people. You've got that eye contact. You feel like you're part of the community. You're part of the place. And I think that's something we really miss with being in our cars all the time. You know,
A lot of
um,
people as well, isn't it? A density of people.
yes, yes, a
Yeah.
lot more people, a lot bigger population.
I mean, Auckland Council, to their credit, they've just changed the rules in the inner city. I'm not sure if these ones are enacted yet, but they're getting rid of minimum size and all those sorts of things,
Okay.
and the requirement to have a proper large deck, which is sometimes next to useless. You just need a Juliet balcony.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, but yeah, Europe, thousands of years to build that stuff, right? And little old New Zealand, 100 and something years.
Yeah, but to be fair, even in places like Spain, beautiful cities and huge amounts of culture, you go and look at some of their new developments, and you could be anywhere.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
you, you could be here, you could be Aussie, it could be the States, it could be anywhere. It's just boring blocks, knocked up as cheap as you can, and one on top of the other. So what did they do right? How were they able to build those cool towns all those years ago? Was it because there were no controls? That it was just organic, or were there controls? I don't
Well,
know.
I guess not having a lift was probably one self-inflicted control, right? To the height.
Okay. Yep.
I think the phone was another thing like that. Yeah,
Yeah,
but
because
just lots of people.
5 levels seems to be an optimum sort of height. Really, you kind of see that a lot in Europe, somewhere between three and five. So, like you say, you can get there without lifts. Although even a lot of the old buildings have retrofitted these tiny little lifts into them.
I think it's the
But
human scale as well. The architects would say,
right.
the human scale, and then you get over that, and Yeah. It's like being on these, it's like, if you go into these tall skyscraper apartment buildings and you're on the 80th floor or the 90th floor and you see the whole city. You've actually got a much better view as long as you can still see the water, 7 or 8 or stories up, because you
Yeah.
get it's more interactive. Otherwise, it
Yeah.
just looks
Yeah.
like you're at a cinema.
Yeah. You're closer to it. Actually, we stayed one of the hotels we were in I think it was in Granada, and we had access to the club lounge, and it was the pretty much the whole top floor, and it was all glass, like probably a 1.5 story height, all glass, and you just looked over like all the roofs in the old town, and you looked up to the palace and over to the cathedral, and it was just it was a really cool space to be because you felt like you're really in amongst it. If you were 20, 30, 40 floors up, yeah, you would be disconnected. But we were maybe at 6 or 7 or 8 levels. You really felt like you were part of the town. It was pretty neat.
Now, because you spent so much time outside New Zealand, and if you listen to the media in New Zealand, it must have been real cheap for you overseas, right? Europe's cheap.
It was so expensive. Oh my god. New Zealand's so cheap. I was actually talking to someone from Tourism New Zealand on the weekend, and I said to her, "You guys need to get the word out. New Zealand is really cheap for Europeans and Americans. It is so cheap at the moment. I mean, basically everything that we bought was twice the price of New Zealand. Didn't matter if it was a
Yeah.
coffee
Wow.
or something to eat in a cafe, a restaurant, a hotel. New Zealand offers really awesome value for tourists at the moment. Awesome value. And also
Yep.
things like fresh
Come on
fruit
down.
and vegetables. Try and get fresh veggies in Madrid or central London. Even it was a couple of times. I remember once in a restaurant I saw. I was like, I was excited to see broccoli on the menu, and I thought, awesome, let's get some greens. And they came back and said, actually, sorry, we don't have any broccoli at the moment. So just it's funny the things that you miss, the things that you take for granted, like good coffee
All
in New
right.
Zealand. Coffee's great, eh? It's so good. You know that from your time in the States.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's just that filter coffee stuff, right?
Yeah.
But the Yanks love adding about half a quarter or whatever of cream on top and some caramel topping on top of that, sherry on top of that.
Yeah.
Okay, what's
Yeah.
happening in the market? What are you doing down in what's happening in Cambridge and Hamilton?
Very little. Very little. Still a buyer's market. Still very quiet, very flat, a lot of negativity, a lot of hoping. I mean, yeah. What about Auckland? What are you seeing?
You've a little agenda here, flat line or turning point. You and me were on this thing close to a year ago talking about it's going to be all sweet ass by the end of the year. Yeah, so it's look, people who've bought land at reduced prices, they're certainly getting cheaper construction costs now. And despite an article yesterday saying, um, you know, construction costs are going up again, house building costs grow at fastest rate in nearly 2 years. I stuck that on LinkedIn, and I've had a plethora of developers and builders say, no, they're still, they're certainly not going up. Council fees are going up. They always go up.
Council fees are going up. So
Rates.
Waipa District Council just doubled their development contributions on the
So
1st of
that's on
July.
12 to 24, did it?
24,600 now in Cambridge per townhouse. So they
Just
just
like
doubled
that.
it.
Jeez.
Um,
And Auckland
Also,
did
our,
there,
our
but
fibre connection back in February was the last development we had connected. And then we just connected these 10 units we're doing now in Cambridge. And the fibre increased 64% development contributions. 64% in 6 months.
wow.
So
Yeah.
it's just, the councils, the government, the monopolies, they are power. Here's another one. We just so that 10 unit site, and
Yep.
we paid 40,000 for power. So
Yep.
it was, I think, about 17 to actually install the infrastructure, and the balance was development contributions. We've just had a price through from Waipo Networks for 15 unit site, 110,000 for power
Getting
for
close to
15
Auckland
units.
prices.
It's just we used to pay like $1,500 a unit. It was a development contribution that was with Well in Hamilton. I don't think I'd ever paid more than about 20 grand, and now we're paying 100.
I
So
know
you
Auckland, in Auckland, we
just
doubled overnight a couple of years ago from 3 to 6 for our greenfield stuff, and now people in Auckland actually don't know how much the power connection is going to cost.
yeah. Well, it's that seems to be the same
You got a
here in Cambridge.
big question mark on
You
your
just need to get
feasibility.
a quote. Yeah, exactly. You've got a quote. So the part of the problem with this 15 unit one is we have to go under the main road and then down the street to the nearest transformer. So and because you can't go and get comparative quotes, you have to use the monopoly provider. Well, you have to pay what they charge you.
Yeah.
Um, so, and that actually leads me on to something. I was listening to a podcast a couple of days ago, and Tim Reardon, he's the one of the directors of the Australian Housing Industry Association.
Right. Yeah.
So they're basically speaking on behalf of builders and developers and so on in Australia. They've just done a big study, and they reckon that 50% of the cost of a new greenfield home in Australia is government and council fees and charges.
Wow.
50%. So if you think about it, in making the section, you're paying your development contributions and all your consent fees and all of that kind of stuff. And then you build a house, and then you're paying all of those connection fees and consents and all that type of thing again. 50%, and they reckon for new apartments it's 38%.
Wow.
Brisbane and Adelaide, taxes and charges have doubled in the last 5 years. The government, this is a good quote, the government gets more from a new house than builders, developers, and land sellers combined. So, and this is exactly what we're seeing in New Zealand, isn't it? The government, because council is just local government, the government's taking more and more and more of every home. They're
Yeah.
taking 15%. If I sell $1 million home, the first thing I do is give 150 grand to the government, right? And so that's 150 as soon as you sell, but then on the way through, resource subdivision, engineering, building consents, development contributions, fees, inspections, it's just too much. It's just too much. I mean, when does it stop?
The
I, I,
Kirsty's had
I
a
don't
good
know.
win in Auckland on
Mm.
some of the stormwater contributions.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, but yeah, that's if you added up her time and stuck an hourly rate on it, she's she spends hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to sort this stuff out for the benefit of the industry. And they had a bit of win on development contributions as well. So development contributions in the project I used to be involved in, we're going to go to 95. They've only gone up to 75 from about 25,000.
yeah,
That's
yeah, yeah,
thousand.
yeah, yeah.
$50,000 increase in development contributions. Stick some contingency on that. Stick some finance costs on that. You have to get a profit to show the bank on that. It's 70, 80 grand. The house prices have to go up by 70, 80 grand just to cover that.
And at the moment, you can buy existing houses for less than new,
And
quite a
there's
bit less than new in some cases.
lots of existing houses. Lots of existing houses. Look,
Yeah.
there's some of my clients, smaller developers, they are selling stuff. There's still people who want to buy pre-sales at a good price. They can only sell it because they've bought the land, not in 2021.
Right.
They've got a deal on the land and they've sorted out all the infrastructure quickly, and they've been able to sell and they can build it reasonably cheap. But even them, they're saying, the sale prices aren't going up. If anything, they're going down. It seems flat, right? Unless you look at it in a sort of a 3 to 6 month window,
Yeah.
and all
Yeah.
of a
So
sudden it's gone down 5%.
if I look at some of these stats, so from REI and Z, median house prices, New Zealand down 0.9% year on year to 763. East Auckland's pretty stable at 689 median, and Auckland's down 3.5% on the year. Sales volumes are up. I mean, that's a one positive, 8.9% year on year. Ex Auckland sales are up 11. So Auckland dragging things down a little bit, which makes sense, right? There's a big overhang of townhouses, especially in Auckland.
I think I was listening to John Bolton at Squirrel, his podcast he spits out, and he was saying, the South Island is forging ahead,
Hmm.
and Auckland and Wellington for obvious reasons, all the government bureaucrats have lost their job, and Auckland just a massive overhang of terrace product, some apartments, and the immigration thing has slowed down quite dramatically. So
I
anyway,
think the further south you go, the better it gets, right? And I think a lot of that's due to the farming incomes.
well,
So there's
I was just doing some research on the farming. I was just read the Farm Confidence Survey in July 2024. You don't want to read that one. It's
oh
dire,
yeah,
it's dire straits, you know. And now the recent one, New Zealand farm. This is from Robobank. I think it's about a month ago. New Zealand farmer confidence continues to soar. Investment intent stronger. You know,
yep.
it's the highest it's been in. I can't remember where it was. 2000 since 2019 or 17 or something like that.
It's
So
also the highest borrowing on record by farmers. I just was reading something this morning that said that they're very confident at the moment. They're moving ahead with investments, and yeah, very
So,
positive.
once again, the rural economy outside your window there is pumping the cash into New Zealand as everything else sort of falters and as, council increase rates and development contributions. And, the only thing inflationary in New Zealand is that stuff.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Insurance rates, school fees, private school fees are going up still.
Well, they're
Anything
going to
that
pay
you
rates.
really
They're going to pay
value.
rates, right? They're going to pay rates, so they're going to cover
That's
that.
true. That's true. Tourism is still pretty low. So
Yeah. The
we're running at
Chinese,
about 80% of pre-COVID, and Chinese are at 65% of
what's around?
pre-COVID.
So I guess that's a domestic thing, right? There's just not enough of them with enough money to go
Well,
overseas, do you reckon? Or
one of well, what the this Tourism New Zealand person said to me was that they reckon big problem with the Chinese coming back is lack of capacity on airline flights across the Tasman. So
Hmm.
this is one of the reasons you may have heard recently they changed the visa requirements for China. So if they have
Yeah.
an Australian visa, they can come here. So a lot of the Australian tourists, Chinese tourists, they go to Australia and then they pop across to New Zealand for a few days, right? And that seems to be quite a common thing. People, their main holiday is to Australia, and then they'll come and see New Zealand while they're in the region. So
Yeah.
that visa helped, but they reckon there's not enough, flight capacity to get them here. So I thought that was quite interesting.
Um, yeah, that new flight goes from Shanghai to New Zealand to Buenos Aires or something, doesn't it?
Okay.
There's a China Airlines that just announced. But yeah, interesting. Yeah, we need them back. Need them spending the money because the cruise ships.
We
Apparently, I
do.
don't. There's two arguments about cruise ships, but anyway, apparently this season coming, there's going to be a lot less, and somewhat to do with our laws on having to wash the ship.
I saw some comments on that on social media a couple months back, and people were like, "Oh, we shouldn't have the cruise ships coming in. They bring all the bacteria with them, and we're all going to get sick." And it's like, "Oh, come on, just crawl back under your bed and hide. Go on, you'll be fine." Yeah, someone needs to be making money, so that you can stay home and we can pay you your benefits. Someone needs to be making money and paying taxes. I think people seem to forget that. I think the money comes from this magic money tree. Unfortunately, it doesn't quite work like that. Rental snapshot. Let's have a quick look at rents.
Yeah.
Rents are, it says rents are up slightly, 636 a week nationally, still down 17 from a year ago. So this must be quarterly numbers I was looking at there. Auckland, a small increase from 698 to 718. Waikato is up from 572 to 574. So it hasn't changed. Said Otago saw major drops in rent, which is funny because their house prices are stabilizing or rising, but the rents are going down.
We've got
Um,
Tony Alexander saying New Zealand landlords. This is quite recent. New Zealand landlords struggle to find tenants as rent demand cools. I know an investment. I
yeah,
know an investment company is finding it a lot harder to find tenants for new product.
yeah.
Of course,
Well, rental listings are the highest in 8 years, apparently, since 2017.
it's at a dollar amount, right? If you
Mhm.
price, you know, if you're pricing high, then people move for $10 change in rent. It's a little bit
Yeah.
different. And then there's
Well,
interest
that's
rates.
yeah. Yeah, I think it's but still on the rents though. I mean, a lot of it is
Yeah.
I think is accidental landlords, right? It's developers can't sell, so they're putting houses on the market for rent. It's people moving overseas, maybe leaving keeping a property at home. I know this in my own family from nieces who have moved to Australia. They leave now, they keep the house here, so they've got something to come back to in time.
Well, I was actually
Um,
talking to one of the big real estate outfits in the country the other day, and there are developments of 40, 50 houses that are just being rented out. because
Wow.
they can't sell. Or they don't want to crystallize what the real value of the house is at this point in time.
Yeah.
And there's enough of those out there. And a lot of them tried Airbnb for a while until they realized that's actually hard work. And what's it doing to my property? So, yeah, there's a
Mm.
lot of accidental landlords. There's a lot of accidental
Actually,
landlords.
here's a couple of numbers on immigration. So the latest number I could find, annual net migration 14,800. So that's
Oh,
pretty
that's quite,
low. It's
yeah.
still positive, but it's pretty low.
But the
And
rest of the world,
tourism, the latest tourism number, 3.3 million people visited, so 14% below pre-COVID. And
mm,
3.3 million is it's not many. I can't remember with Croatia. They've got about 3.9 million population. They had something like 30 million tourists or something.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
just ridiculous. So we're not even matching our population in tourism. That's pretty poor, really. Something's not right there.
Although, I was talking to someone else, and their daughters are in the UK, and they're about to come home because they get paid more here
Oh, really?
in sort of professional services than in the
Hmm.
UK. So, and it's pretty tough over there at the moment.
Oh,
Um,
UK's in a lot of trouble, eh? I mean, London's awesome. I was pleased to see that London hadn't changed, and we went back, spent a bit of time in where we used to live in Soho, and Covent Garden, Leicester Square, Trafalgar Square, and all in those central areas of town are just buzzing, and there's so
yeah,
much on. There's musicals and shows, and all the rest of it's great, but and then you go to the sort of the flasher areas, Mayfair and Kensington and places like that, and it's almost exclusively Arabs. So you
mm,
really see London is not the UK.
no
London
Russians.
is, yeah, Russians and Arabs, I would say. Yeah, a lot of chauffeur-driven, Maybachs and Rolls Royces and this type of thing. In fact, I was going to do a video on it. I didn't get around to it. We were walking. We went and met some friends in Mayfair, and it was a beautiful afternoon, about 6 o'clock in the evening. And I was walking there, and there was like hardly any traffic. I was like, "Wow, this is cool." And then I clicked. It was all like chauffeur-driven, high-end vehicles. It was Lamborghinis. It was Ferraris. And then I was like, "Now I get it. The public transport thing, right?" So the average Joe was literally underground, right on the underground on the tube, coming and going. They're scurrying around like rats in the dark, and the rich are up top on these empty streets, you see, because they have a congestion charge. It's about 38 New Zealand dollars a day, going up to 45 New Zealand dollars a day in January. And then even if you pay the $38 to get into town, then you need to park, and you're paying, $25 an hour to park at least. So average people, the congestion charge and the parking keeps them out, and then the rich get these nice empty roads. So it's sold as public transport, and you're helping the environment. But I'm beginning to wonder now.
It's a cunning plan. Well, Auckland are debating it now, congestion tax, and
Yes, I saw that.
it's a
Brilliant, isn't it? Don't fix the roads, don't fix public transport.
yeah,
Just bring in a new tax.
tax the people who can't afford it,
Yeah, yeah,
and
brilliant.
don't provide. In our case, don't provide decent public transport. Well, they are sort of providing it, but look, with a city of 1 million people, you can't. There's only so much you can provide, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. We've got to start though. Is it true they sent that boring machine back? That tunnel borer? I'd heard that. So the one that went through like on the Western Motorway, you've got the tunnels going through to Mangere and so on. And we should have. We apparently we sent it back. Imagine how many places you could use that around the country, like getting through to the Kaimais, for example. Why is there no tunnel through the Kaimais? I mean,
Yeah,
that's crazy driving over the top there.
yeah,
Just madness. We need
yeah,
to spend on infrastructure.
yeah. A
Anyway,
lot of,
interest rates. So
mm,
OCR 3.25. The Reserve Bank decided to hold.
yeah.
Uh, do they live in a different country to the rest of us, or like
They're
do
just seeing the
they?
council rates inflation.
Yeah.
I reckon council rates as a percentage of
uh,
your current market value at the moment. I'd like to see that graph. I bet you it's extraordinary, right? The amount of money you pay in rates divided by your house value.
yeah.
I bet you
Yeah.
it's an all-time high all around the country.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I'd
Anyway,
agree with that. I'd agree with
interest
that. So,
rates.
so yeah. So we had 6 cuts totaling about 225 basis points, which has brought us back to the 3.25. But most commentators, Tony Alexander, fair enough to hold, but cuts are coming. Kiwi Bank, they should have cut, and more are coming. Some of the other commentators have said, have said that if the fact that they've held now and are going to cut later just means they're going to have to cut further. They're just dragging out the pain. That's certainly that's certainly my view. Is that what are they waiting for? What's improving? What's the catalyst that's going to bring things back? To make the country grow. We've already seen tourism it doesn't seem to be coming back in any great rush. Construction is a massive part of our economy. That's not coming back. So what are they waiting for?
Well, the farmers have come back a little bit, but overseas treasuries are
though, right?
Treasuries are at like 4.7%. So you got some overseas influence maybe on the rates. I mean, John Bolton at Squirrel, he reckons there might be one more cut left, and our interest rates might be looking pretty good at the moment in relative terms.
Yeah. See, this is the thing that bugs me though. It's like, so our economy is doing terribly, right?
Yep.
Most people aren't doing well. In fact, I'd say a lot of people are really hurting, and talking to people around the traps, nobody's having a great time, right? But they don't want to lower rates because of factors that we have no control over.
Yeah.
So, like you said, council, insurance, tariffs, right? Tariffs are inflationary, so that's going to push up global inflation. All kinds of things that we don't have control over, and you go, well, that doesn't make any sense. So we've got to stay in a slump so that there's no inflation. Yet, wasn't it the Reserve Bank who caused all this massive inflation over COVID? And that's what we're still trying to work through now. They're the ones who lowered rates too low, kept them low for too long, and now they won't let us get out of this slump. I don't know. It's just frustrating. Very frustrating. I don't get it. Construction costs and pipeline. Build costs up 2.7% year on year.
That's bullshit. I've done the math. I've asked the people. Everyone's getting tenders in that are better.
They're saying not inflationary, just a bounce from last year's dip. So
I think there was something that I read somewhere that they didn't have to include a 1% drop or something. That's just statistics. The market is. Look, I'm in this since we last did a podcast. I've recruited a whole heap of people for different developers and contractors and consultants, and you get to know a little bit about the industry all around the country, different industries. Well, sorry, all mainly construction and property development industries, but different regions. And anecdotally, some of these larger construction companies. I was talking to one chap a week or two back, and his company has just finished a $40 and $30 million project in their town. And replaced it with a $4 million and $3 million project.
Slightly different numbers.
And that's what's happening in the commercial construction arena. Outside of farm buildings, I suspect.
Right. So, projects getting smaller.
Yeah, projects getting smaller, and the larger companies are chasing smaller jobs. I'm just doing a civil tender thing where one of my clients wants to, look at their civil pricing. And there's some competitive pricing coming back. They're all hurting though. So it's not that sustainable. So so construction.
Well, there's only so far that people can cut back. I mean, we look at it with our own tradies. I mean, they're all suffering the same inflationary impacts as the rest of us. Around things like rates and insurance, but not just that. There's more and more regulation coming through too, eh? I mean, everyone's drowning in red tape. I think a lot of this is still flowing through from the Ardern Robertson era, where there are new rules coming out every day. You just seem to spend more and more of your time filling out forms. I mean, AML I've talked about before is just ridiculous, but there's just so much paperwork, so much admin, so many consultants involved. It's just so expensive. So, for those tradies, I mean, the only thing they can really cut back on is their labor rate. That's about it. And then what? So they're working for nothing. Brilliant.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not going to last long, is it?
I guess the other way you can cut back is rather than pay margin on margin, you can split the trades up and do more project management yourself as well. Right. That's sort of one way of doing it. What about that gold mine that got declined because of the lizard report wasn't up to scratch or something? It's like, blimmin' hell. I think they're quickly backtracking as they realise their way of thinking is about 2.5 years old now.
Well, so if we're to wrap up on that construction costs and pipeline, weatherboard's up, insulation down, prices high but stable, plenty of stock, tough for builders short term. Forecast is slow and steady pickup. No boom like 21, 22. Oh yeah, no surprise there. Where are we in the cycle, in the property market cycle?
I think the Ren's had it. We've been flat for 2.5 years, basically, haven't we?
Well, the peak was around October, November 21,
Yeah.
peak in pricing, and then, yeah, would have started coming off. So 22, 23, 24, 25. I suppose 22 was still pretty buoyant, wasn't it? So, yeah, it's
Yeah,
probably 2.5 years. Sounds about right.
well, from a new development point of view, things dropped dramatically between November 21 and sort of, at least in Auckland, and sort of November 22. So all 22, 23. So it's at least 3 years flat,
Yeah,
three and a
yeah.
half years. So it's going to be 4 years soon by Christmas time.
It's dragging on, eh? So some say we're at the bottom. Others think we're slowly climbing. Modest growth forecast for 25, stronger in 26. But yeah,
But it doesn't
25 was
happen
going
like
to be
that.
stronger, and 24 was going to be stronger.
It doesn't happen like that. But you know what's going to happen? It's going to be the same as it's going like that, and then bang, all right?
Yeah,
But we
yeah.
don't know how long this bit goes for.
Well, we don't know. We don't know, and that's why I've bought a couple of sites, and I've got a couple of consents. Some consents I haven't got. There's 15 units, so it was 7, nearly 8 months in. I still haven't got resource consent. It just drags on. More consultants, more questions, more Section 92s. Things that like this is the hardest it's been, right? I mean, this is not well, for one, consenting is the hardest I've experienced it, but also the property market itself. Like in 2009, 10, 11, I was still doing developments, still selling off plans
Yeah,
slowly, and
yeah.
small developments. Actually, not that small. Did a 15 lot in about 2011, 2012, I think it was. Um, this is a lot worse, saying that just
Well, there
it's a
are
lot.
some who are still getting. They've got all the factors going for them. They're still getting some stuff, across the board, because a lot of the overflow of stock in Auckland, it's old now, right?
Mm,
There are developments where they just haven't gone for CCC, so they don't have to, so they don't have to get title. Otherwise, you kick into that, it becomes old stock, and after 6 months or 12 months or whatever it is, the bank doesn't treat it as a new home anymore.
right,
So you got that
right.
issue now. You got a lot of, and especially if people are holding it to rent.
So they sit on it without code, but you're not allowed to rent stuff out without code. I'm pretty sure it's in the
Yeah, no,
tenancy
two different things,
rules.
right? It's the same deal. If you're renting it out as a short-term measure, then it clicks over 12 months. You're automatically, you know, it's second hand. So I was talking to one agent. He reckons as soon as you rent it out, price drops 5%. As soon as it hits 12 months, price drops another. It drops 5%. So new people with new developments at different price points, and then they're few and far between. But that's happening a little bit, a little bit. But apartments. You can't, I was talking to a company who do a lot of apartment sales, and they say it's just a trickle. Things are happening in the good areas for good product. Things like Domain Terraces overlooking Auckland Domain, and that sort of higher end type stuff. The sales are trickling in, but other stuff, it's hard work.
There's good opportunities out there now.
Of
I
course,
mean, I
and
think for people who are, looking for things to do, you're a small developer, or, you're someone who's developing part-time or something, I'd be looking at the existing stock, looking at older houses on decent size sections, places that there's a number of things you could be doing. I mean, if you're buying under replacement value today, like you're paying less for old than you are for new, a lot less in some cases. So renovation is
yep,
an option, right? That's a simple one, because if you think about it, like a first home buyer, uh, they're going to borrow as much as they can to get into a house. They are not really in a position to be able to buy a house and then do it up, because if they go along to the bank and say, "Hey, I want 100 grand to do the kitchen and the bathroom and do up the house," well, the bank's going to look at them and go, "Well, one, you already tapped out. Two, have you got any experience? Do you have quotes? Do you know what you're doing? Probably not." So if you buy the place, you do it up, then you can sell it to a first home buyer who's borrowing 90%, right? And then they've got a house that's all done. They don't need to do it. They don't need to borrow money. So there's an opportunity there. Buying stuff now that you can rent, get consent, and then just wait. So land bank, Basically, I think it's a good a time as any to land bank. I'm certainly doing some of that myself. Um, I mean, there are just so many things to do, but I think that the biggest difficulty is going to be trying to put into your feasibility the time it's going to take to sell and what price are you going to get. You know,
Yeah.
like renovation works really well in a rising market
Yeah.
because the worse you do at project management, the longer it takes, the more money you make
Yeah. Yeah.
because the price goes up.
Yeah.
In a flat market, and I think we're coming out, right. We've been in this slump for long enough. Interest rates have come off a lot, and they're going to start to have an effect. I have a stat somewhere. I think New Zealand mortgage borrowers are at some of the shortest terms they've ever been. It's like 6 to 8 months
Yep.
on your mortgage is about average at the moment, which I was really surprised at. And I think the reason for that is people have been fixing short term to get the lower rate because you're paying about 6.5% floating, but you can fix for under 5, right? So they're fixing for 6 or 12 months, waiting for the Reserve Bank to lower rates, which they've been drip feeding at 0.25, 0.25. So I think once these rates are starting to come down, that money is going to start to flow through. People are going to start to feel a little bit more confident, and they're going to start. The biggest thing, though, I think the biggest uncertainty at the moment is people's jobs. I think people are still quite concerned about their jobs.
It's an
And
interesting thing in this recruitment world. It's a lot of people don't want to leave their job for the risk of going to a new job, especially when you have a 90-day clause and all that sort of stuff, you know?
that makes sense.
And it's why would you really? Let's face it. Big risk. So there's a big risk in changing your jobs. There's a bit of stagnation there in the employment market. I mean, I was talking to a guy who runs a large multidisciplinary consultant uh, this morning at the gym, and he was saying, "Yeah, we're hanging in there. We haven't had to lay anyone off." All right.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
that's as positive as he's got.
I found this note here. New Zealand mortgages in May 25 are still near shortest duration on record at 7.8 months. So the record started in 2016. Borrowers are still seemingly expecting further RBNZ rate cuts to see fixed rate mortgages decline further ahead, and hence are willing to wait before fixing. This is somewhat delaying the pass-through of easing, giving floating mortgage rates are higher than fixed rates. So yeah, so it's kind of because so many people are waiting for rates to drop, it's kind of slowing that flow through of benefit in a way. So yeah, we're kind of working against ourselves, I suppose.
Yeah, well, Rodney Dickens, he's got something here. Things aren't as gloomy as
I haven't
card
read his stuff in
spending.
a while. I used to always read his stuff. Is he still putting reports out?
Yeah, I've just found one here from 7th of July, actually.
Okay.
Things aren't as gloomy as card spending data suggests. I won't go into the details. I think he's basically saying that the data undercooks how much people are actually spending. So the farmer stuff that flows into the rural economies, and that will start coming out. And they've had such a hard time for so long that they've got pent up demand to buy stuff, right? They're all buying
Yep.
utes, although I hear the government's got some tax on utes, the fringe benefit thing that they need to address, otherwise it's gonna
Oh,
catch
really?
everyone. It's gonna catch everyone out.
Oh, you know what is positive? Bitcoin had 112,000 US dollars, new
Yes,
record high.
Bitcoin.
Oh, and Nvidia became the first ever company to be worth $4 trillion.
Wow.
Yeah, $4 trillion. Quite incredible,
Wow.
way.
Different
So,
world.
I mean, stock markets are still going up. They're going up and up. Germany's up 23% this year. UK's up 8.5. China's up 14. Dow's up 4. Nasdaq up 6.7, and New Zealand's down 2.6.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
So what are we doing? What are we doing, politicians? What are we doing, Reserve Bank?
our stock market is an outlier on that. Yeah, everyone else is going for it, and we're just I don't know what. I don't know what. That is a worry. I mean, I don't want to make this a political broadcast, but I am a bit concerned. Like as I was saying, councils are a major problem at the moment right across the country. And what's actually happening? There's a lot of talk. There's been this talk about granny flats without consent. What was that the first time? 20 months ago? Coming up on 2 years ago, you're about to build granny flats without consent. You still can't.
Right.
Then about 6 months ago, it was you could build 70 square meter granny flats, not 60, but 70, except
Yep.
you can't.
Yeah.
We're going to revamp the RMA. We're going to get more control over councils. We're going to, nothing has changed on the ground in terms of
No.
getting consents.
They just
Only
talk.
thing that's changed is costs have gone up and there's more bureaucracy. I mean, this latest one in Cambridge, they sent so we needed to see if there was enough sewer and water capacity, right?
Right.
So the council said they need to do that. So they sent the water off to a consultancy in Christchurch, and they sent the wastewater to a consultancy in Auckland. So two different consultancies to see what the capacity was. Took a few months. We get the reports back. Then they engaged two more consultancies, one each to check the water and one to check the wastewater. So we had 4 consultancies plus council to tell us something that council just used to do as a matter of course in the past. I think just that process to say, yes, we have water and wastewater capacity was $27,000. That's not including my own planner, my own surveyor, my own engineers. This is just the council and their consultants. 4 consultancies. And part of the problem is, the council admit, they don't have the staff. They haven't got the skills. Because as soon as they train them, they leave and work for a consultancy where they get paid more, right?
Yeah.
And then more regulation keeps coming through, more government regulation, more environmental regulation, all the rest of it. So there's more and more work that the councils can't do. So they keep on outsourcing it. So the consultancies get bigger and bigger, and you've just got this big cost creation machine that slows everything down. It's just, the system is really broken, and
then they argue
we're
with
just
each
not
other.
doing anything about it.
You have geotech engineers arguing with each other. It's a hard science, It's just madness. Yeah, it's getting worse. It's getting worse. I've got to. I'm involved in a project where I just gave up on the traffic. I said, "Can we just pay you guys, i.e., the government, to sort it out, please?"
Oh, really?
Why are we even in the middle?
Yeah, probably because you're trying to keep costs down. But
Yeah, well, you do.
good
You
luck with
get,
that.
but then it's like you said, you got 4 consultants, bureaucracy, this, and this, and oh my gosh.
And then we wonder why we're not attracting capital. That's part of the problem. Money's still flowing out of New Zealand. That's what you see in our stock market. That's what you see in our housing market. Money's not coming in. And unfortunately, again, you look at a lot of the comments on social media, a lot of New Zealanders, they don't want money. They don't want millionaires to buy property here. They're talking about bringing in something where you can buy a house over, let's say, $5 million. What a fantastic opportunity for builders and architects and the construction community to build cool homes. And an American buys it, parks it up here, pays someone to clean it and do the lawns and maintain it and all the rest of it, and they come for a few weeks a year. What people don't seem to understand is that house doesn't go to America. That quality asset remains in New Zealand. Wouldn't you want people to build assets in your country?
Yeah, we don't need a cap either. Just let them, if they want to buy, come and buy the oversupply of homes in Auckland. Come to New Zealand, buy a home. And if you're a first time buyer moaning at the moment, it's it's been like this for a year, and it might be, I don't know how long, but it won't last forever. What a great time to buy a damn house, because developers,
Affordability's improved a lot, eh?
I don't think developers are going to get. I don't think developers are going to get any more desperate. Yeah, so developers, I don't think developers are getting any more desperate. I think the desperate ones, there's a few mortgagee sales and stuff going on at the moment, but the desperate ones they've been washed out now. So the others are just holding in there. So it's now to do a deal. I mean, it's now to do a deal. I mean, I know one development, they'd only sold 1 out of 9, and they've got the other 8 on the market. But in that case, that developer vendor was being unrealistic to try and sell the properties. So they might get more and more desperate. But what a time for a buyer to do a deal, Just lowball all the product out there, and you'll get.
Well, if these numbers are to be believed, this is from New Zealand Initiative. In May 25, a typical Kiwi household earning the median income would need 6.26 years of income to buy a median house. That's come down a lot, eh?
Yeah, I thought it was 9 or something.
It
Wow.
was 9, 10, even 11, I think, in Auckland. They now reckon Auckland's sitting at around 7.6. So it's come back a lot, because you think, if you think 5 years since COVID, when it was, so since 2020, when house prices were really high, and it was 11 times income. Well, over 5 years, incomes have actually increased a lot. Again, I saw something the other day where, New Zealand incomes are up quite substantially in the last 5 years. It may not
So
it may not seem like it, because everything's got so much more expensive,
who
you
are we
know?
crediting this? Who are we crediting? Who are we crediting that homes have never been more affordable to? Do we dare say it was the previous government?
No, no, definitely not. Definitely not. Actually,
They would
that
have,
same stat, I wish I had it here. It had how much house prices had increased and how much our incomes had increased, and it was pretty similar, and it was the minimum wage in New Zealand. So it was the minimum wage 5 years ago, minimum wage today, the difference, and house prices and the difference, and it was quite similar. And then it showed the US minimum wage 5 years ago and the minimum wage today hasn't changed at all.
right.
They haven't increased their minimum wage at all. You really don't want to be a low level employee in the States. It's,
But
man,
does
it
that
must be
help
so tough.
productivity? Raising the
No,
minimum wage? You know,
no.
yeah, if you
Our productivity is terrible. It's absolutely shocking.
if you raise the minimum age, you've got to slash staff or turn to robots, right?
Well, that's where we're going. Amazon now has 1 million robots
Yeah,
in
there you go.
their warehouses. They have less staff today than they had in 2016,
Yeah.
and the company's that much bigger.
Actually,
Crazy.
I was listening to an interesting podcast last night, and they're saying, well, robots aren't new, everybody. Back in the day, to cart, a bunch of wood down the road, you might have to have, it'd be 10 people carrying the stuff. And then they got the horse and cart, that was a sort of robot. And then you got 2 or 3 people. And then you got a truck, and then you got one truck driver. And now we're replacing the truck driver. So there's different ways of looking at the old, robotics and productivity and automation and everything else. It's
Mm.
actually quite an interesting perspective.
Well, there's quite a lot around us already. I mean, you just walk into something like a McDonald's, and the first thing you're greeted by is a robot, right? A big screen where you put your order in.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yep.
it's just a robot. Um, no, they're all over the place, actually. But technology has some advantages too. Going back to the tube in London, you don't buy tickets anymore.
Oh
You
yeah.
you swipe your phone or your credit card on the way into the tube, and you
Nice.
swipe on the way out, and it charges you for your trip to a maximum of, I think it was £8 a day.
All right.
So you just travel and it bills you.
Nice.
Do you remember the days when you'd have to queue up in front of a blooming machine behind people, and you haven't got enough the right coins? You don't really know how much your trip is, and travel's a lot easier with tech. I mean, you're never lost, right? But it also takes away a little bit of the fun of it. I mean,
What other tech did you see
uh,
over there? Any new tech in the property related world? In hotels or anything?
can't think of anything that immediately jumps out. Um, no, but that on the tube I thought was very clever. It was very clever. So, final takeaways. Developers, now's the time to prepare. Um, I can't tell you whether now is the right time to buy, but I certainly feels like we've got to be somewhere near the low if we're not already off the low. Um, I think for investors, it's a tough one. The biggest concern I have about property investment is that we get another Labor government and they remove interest
Mm.
deductibility, right? So on the positive side for investors, I think there will be less investment property available year by year now, right? As people get older, they're selling down, and as young people are not as interested in rental property, they're more interested in crypto and the share market and so on. And even for people like me, who've been a property investor for nearly 30 years. I'm not really that keen on building a bigger position in rental property because the risks are quite high. I mean, the interest deductibility is just one of them, but there will be more taxes. There's likely to be a capital gains tax at some point in the future. There'll be more rules against landlords in favour of tenants. It's just the way that we're going in New Zealand, and I think part of it is planned because build to rent seems to be the approved option by government and large corporations. It's where we want to go. We want to build big blocks of 200 or 300 apartments and have them owned by big offshore companies who rent them out. It's going to take some time, though, before that competes with the mum and dad landlords on a large scale, because most of those build to rent would be going to higher rents, right? Because they're
Yeah, it's
nice new apartments.
young professionals who can afford that higher rent and
So
pay
they're
a
cherry
little
picking
bit
the
of
best
extra for
tenants,
amenity.
right? They're
Yeah.
cherry picking the best tenants and leaving mum and dad landlords to deal with the difficult tenants. Awesome. Thank you very much. So that's another issue. And I also think in New Zealand, there's never been less respect for landlords and for rental property than today. There is a huge class of people who are extremely entitled and believe that housing should be provided to them. It's their human right, which is great, but it's not my human right to invest my hard-earned savings into a building and manage it and look after it for you when you don't pay your rent and you trash it. Okay, so I think
Well, they're
that
indoctrinated. They were
they
indoctrinated
are.
for 6 years, right? And
Yep.
and you just can't turn it off so quickly.
No, no. So I think
They changed the attitude though when the rental market was booming because there wasn't enough supply. Then they don't, half of them fall off that bandwagon.
yeah,
The problem is
yeah.
now that
Well,
there's more rental options,
but
they jump back on.
this is a temporary blip, though, right?
Yeah,
This is a
yeah,
temporary
everything's
blip.
temporary.
I think
We've
rents are going to keep on going higher. There's going to be less choice of rentals, and there'll be a time when people look back and go, "Oh, wasn't it great when you rented off Tim and Joe and." And they used to come and bring us a cake at Christmas and whatever. Like renting from mum and dad landlords is going to be something that I think we look back with sort of pleasantly. We remember as a nice, quaint
yeah,
time. Because when you're in one of these build to rents and something goes wrong and you've got to sit on the phone for 40 minutes to the Philippines and try and explain to someone why your toilet's not working and go through the process and wait a week for someone to come out, and it's sold as there's a panacea. I don't think it's going to be quite as amazing as they make out.
well, I don't. It's just on a continuum of property for me. So there's a bit for everybody really.
Yeah, well, if it's another option, cool. That's good too. You
But
build a couple of hundred units.
don't vilify mum and dad investors.
Yeah.
That's the problem I had over the years. Don't vilify them because that was the angle. Why do you have to take this opposite angle?
Exactly. What's wrong with somebody owning one rental property or two rental properties?
Red Bull and McLaren, not Red Bull, not Red Bull or McLaren. He was on a good pay wicket, wasn't he? Jeez.
Yeah. Buyers, still time to negotiate, right? There's
Negotiate hard.
plenty of
and
property
just-
on the market. Don't be pushing.
Absolutely.
I was talking to someone recently, and they were like, "Oh, but the agent said they've got all this, and then we've got to put our best foot forward." And I
Yeah, a
was like,
multi-deal offer. It's a multi-deal. It's a multi offer now. All of a sudden, it's been sitting there for a year. Now it's a multi-offer.
Maybe start using one of my phrases when I'm told it's a multi-offer. I say, "Thank you very much. I'm out."
Yeah.
And then they're like, "Oh, but no, it's all right. Just let me know when
If you
the
don't
sale
sell,
doesn't. If you don't
yeah.
sell, just give me a call."
Yeah, exactly.
I'd say 90% of the time I get a call.
Yeah.
Oh,
I have been called out thinking that though. Right during COVID, when I was going to buy this little spot in the Mount, I got, yeah. The agent told me the first time I don't think they did have an offer, and the second time they did, and I didn't believe them. So I missed out. But all this, it's sort of flat, doom and gloom, blah. It's no good. Things change quickly, right? Property doesn't go in a slight curve. And I tell you now as well, in this recruitment game, you think you advertise to someone and you get thousands of applications. You don't get thousands of good applications. You get very few. And the biggest problem is when we move through all this stock, another inflationary thing that's going to push up the prices of houses more is the fact that we ain't going to have enough people, enough damn consultants. We're not going to have enough people in these companies to project manage and to build and to write reports and to actually do this in the trades, right?
What about builders and plumbers and
Exactly.
electricians and all these
Exactly.
guys who are leaving for Aussie and the UK
Yep.
the last couple of years? We'll be screaming out for them soon because it will come back, right? Property always
Of course
comes
it does.
back.
It always does. It's cyclical.
And for no other reason, inflation, right? costs are just going to keep on going up. But in a country like New Zealand, we are reliant on immigration. We need immigration. That's a backbone of New Zealand. So our population is going to grow. So it's going to come back, and it might not be this year, it might not be next year, but it will come back, and you've just got to be patient, and you've got to play the long game.
So some people are not being patient at the moment. It's interesting. It's sort of only anecdotal, but in Papatoetoe in Auckland, they're paying $1,700 a metre again for the old brick house in a big section to put 7 townhouses on.
Really?
Yeah, I think it's the community there in that area is pretty competitive in the development space, and they're pretty bullish though to pay that sort of money. That's what it was in 2021. The problem is what's happened obviously is water care for all these red zones. The amount of developable land's gone from that down to that.
Yeah, right.
Because there's no wastewater capacity.
Yeah.
So
awesome. So we have government restricting with the Resource Management Act restricting, and council district plans restricting where we can develop, and now they're restricting further with sewer and water. So what's going to happen to land prices at some point once it turns around?
Yeah, the politicians can talk all they like about rules, but they got to throw money at infrastructure.
Oh, that's a good point. Actually, I spoke the other day with the housing minister, Tama Potaka. So I'm going to have a podcast with him shortly. He's heading back to Wellington, so just got to work out a time. But he's got a few things that he wanted to have a chat about. So, and that's something I've been wanting to. I've been speaking to a bunch of different people in government to try and find out information a bit earlier that I can share on the podcast, because that's something I find quite difficult is knowing what's coming, and especially because the media is still so left. If government's got something positive to talk about, they're not really interested. So yeah, I think I've got to try and find out what I can and
one thing that a group is working on, and it's I can't remember what it is. It's like you can defer your rates. So what happens is, and you defer development contributions. So what a company's proposing is that if your development contributions, like in Waipara, are 24 grand, right? The buyer can elect to, rather than pay you 24 grand, they'll just pay 24 grand to this finance company. The finance company will pay the council off and charge you an interest rate. So you pay it on your rates bill.
Yeah, that's interesting. Interesting. You know what I like most about that? It's making the council and government costs more obvious to people. Because one of the reasons councils can put up their fees so much is that it's just developers complaining, right?
Yeah.
And who cares about developers? They make too much money already, right? They're just greedy buggers. So, but if people realize that, we don't pay it, we just pass it on. It's built into the house price.
You make a good point, actually. The psychological impact. Yeah, you make a good point. They're already doing this in Mildale based on big infrastructure, but it was very hard to get it off the ground on any other projects. But now this new initiative, it's not new worldwide. I think they do it in British Columbia.
Okay.
And they're also doing other things, like if you're older and you can't afford to pay your rates, you can sign up to this scheme and you essentially pay the rates when you sell your house.
Okay. See, in Switzerland, they do it differently. Your rates are based on your income. So when you're retired and your income reduces, you pay less rates.
Oh, really? Wow.
Whereas in New Zealand, you retire and your rates just keep on going up. So you're not making any money and you're paying more rates every year. Awesome. It's such a good system.
Well, it's going to be great to hear the minister on your podcast. That'll be a good watch for everyone.
Yeah. He seems he seems like a very practical sort of guy, and he's lived around the place. He's been in New York for 3.5 years or something, and and he's lived different places, and yeah, it just seems quite concerned too. Like, so he's very very concerned with how the industry is feeling. What are developers doing? What are builders doing? What are the tradies that you're seeing? Have they got enough? Have they got enough work, or what's their pipeline like? And he actually seems generally concerned, which is
tough,
which is good. That's what we want, right?
Tough for most of them.
It is tough. It's really tough, and so that's sort of my sort of just to wind it up is I'd just like to say to people to focus on trying to keep this thing positive. I struggle a bit, especially in the winter when it's dark and the short days, and you come home from work and it's dark and you're just like, so on sunny days, try and take some time off, get outside, go for a walk or a run or a cycle or whatever. Catch up with your friends, play sport, do anything that gets you out of your head, I think, and gets you feeling good. For me, the quickest thing is exercise. And if I go into the gym or go for a run, I feel differently. I feel better straight away. Takes my mind off work, which is relatively negative at the moment. It just feels like everything's hard. So yeah, really do put some effort into that. It's and if you need to think of it, it's actually part of your work. If you're a builder, or electrician, or plumber, then you go, well, I can't go to the gym, or I can't go for a run, or I can't go and sit outside in the sun. I've got work to do. But staying positive, staying and looking after your mental health, that is work. That's if you want to run a business and you want to build up, you want to get investments or get into development or whatever it needs to be, then you need to be switched on. You need to be positive. You need to be motivated, and you need to work on that. It's not automatic. It's, well, for some people is. Some people are always happy, but then they've probably got some other problem, right? So yeah, it's do try and stay positive, and the market will come back. So
always darkest
it's
before
just
the
part
dawn.
of the cycle.
Nicola Willis said, "Darkest before the dawn."
Yeah, absolutely.
What's the other slogan? The market can stay irrational longer than you can stay solvent.
Yeah.
So hang in there, everyone. Hang in there.
Yeah.
And for those who can, take advantage.
Yeah.
It doesn't stay like this. No, you wouldn't even, if we were talking like this, if we were trying to predict stuff like this in 2021, you would think we're crazy, right?
Well, I remember saying to some people, I'm like, if you want to sell, if you've got too much debt and you want to reduce, do it now, because there'll come a time in the property market where the phone stops ringing, right? It just stops, and you can discount your property as much as you want. It just doesn't sell because people aren't buying, and that's kind of where we are at the moment. It's not completely stopped, but it's very, very slow. The confidence is not there, but that'll change again. That'll change again.
Yeah, and this is the time for people to join John Kenel's Property Development Club to learn, right, and prepare.
Yep.
Prepare for what's coming.
Absolutely. Yep. Get into that course. It'll get you thinking, make you feel good. You'll learn something, and yeah. Keep getting in touch. Ask questions. Tell us what you'd like next on the podcast, and we'll start doing these regular again. We had a bit of a break, but we're back and we're into it, and we're gonna ride the upcycle. We're gonna ride the wave. It's coming.
Absolutely.
It's coming. Awesome. Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you, John. Thank you, everyone.
All right.